Have you ever felt trapped by expectations that aren't your own? A life mapped out for you, but no room for your heart's true desires. What would you do if you had to choose between family loyalty and true love? Leave a comment below and tell us what you'd choose, your family's legacy or love that's truly yours. Do you think Liam is right to feel trapped in his world? Liam Kensington had always felt like a ghost in his own life. He was the heir to the Kensington fortune, one of the wealthiest families in the country, and yet it was hard to remember a time when he had ever truly felt alive. His world was one of opulence, endless social events, and family expectations that weighed on him like a suit of armor, suffocating every breath he took. He was the perfect heir, a product of generations of wealth and privilege, but he wasn't sure who he was anymore. Before we dive into today's story, I want to take a moment to warmly welcome you to the Powder Room Tales, where unforgettable stories are manufactured with you in mind. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a single tale from the Powder Room. We'd also love to know, where are you watching us from? Drop your location in the comments below and let's connect as one big family across the world. Because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. May God bless every one of you, my amazing Powder Room Tales family, with a long, joyful, and fulfilled life. Amen. Now, let's get into today's main story. The family estate, a sprawling mansion perched on a hill overlooking the city, had always been his prison. His father, Victor Kensington, was a man of unyielding ambition and control. Victor had worked hard to build the family empire, now worth billions, and he expected nothing less than perfection from his only son. Liam had been groomed from birth to carry the Kensington name forward, to manage the family's investments, run their businesses, and marry within their social circle. Love, in their world, was merely a formality. As he stood at the edge of the room, watching his father work the crowd with a practiced smile, Liam felt like an outsider in his own world. He was expected to be the charming, polished heir, the future of the Kensington empire. But all he wanted was a moment of peace, a break from the performance. He felt like a puppet, dancing on strings pulled by his father's will. The women around him smiled sweetly, vying for his attention, knowing that winning his favor meant entering the inner circle of wealth and influence. But Liam couldn't care less. None of them saw him, not really, just his family's fortune. He excused himself from the conversation, retreating to a quieter part of the mansion, a small garden with ivy-covered walls and a trickling fountain. Here, in the solitude of the night, Liam could breathe. For a few precious moments, he was just a man, not an heir, not a future CEO, just Liam. What do you think happens when a man raised in privilege starts to feel the weight of his family's expectations? Could he really break free from that pressure to follow his heart? Hit the like button if you've ever felt trapped by what others expect of you, and comment below. Do you think Liam can find a way to live for himself, or will he remain the puppet of his family? Have you ever met someone who made you question everything you thought you wanted? How would you feel if that person challenged everything you knew about yourself? Leave a comment below and tell us about a time when a person made you rethink your life choices. Could you relate to Liam's struggle, feeling pulled between two worlds? The night moved on, the chatter of the gala fading into the background as Liam and Isabel continued their conversation in the quiet corner of the garden. The distant sound of clinking glasses, laughter, and the hum of conversation seemed so far away, as though they were in a different world entirely. "So, what brings you to an event like this?" Liam asked, his curiosity piqued. "I mean, it's not every day I meet someone who doesn't seem interested in rubbing elbows with the high society." Isabel raised an eyebrow, a small smirk playing at the corner of her lips. "She could ask you the same question," she replied. "You don't exactly seem thrilled to be here yourself."
Liam chuckled, a sound that felt unexpectedly free. True, he admitted, but my family insists I make an appearance. It's part of the job, I suppose. He hesitated for a moment, then added, it's hard to breathe in this world sometimes. Isabel's gaze softened. She understood that more than he realized. She had her share of expectations weighing on her, dreams of becoming a successful artist, of proving herself in a world that often overlooked people like her. But hearing Liam speak about his life with such candidness, she felt a pang of empathy. He wasn't just a privileged heir. He was someone who, in his way, felt just as trapped as she sometimes did. I get it, Isabel said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of unspoken understanding. But I'm guessing it's not the same kind of pressure, your world. It's not exactly designed for freedom, is it?
Liam's gaze hardened for a split second, but only for a brief moment. He quickly masked it with a smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. It's not that simple, he replied. You don't know my family. They don't just control the business, they control everything. And I'm the one who has to carry that burden every single day. Isabel's heart ached for him. She could hear the strain in his voice, the sense of entrapment that came with being the heir to a vast fortune. It was a life she couldn't even imagine, one where every choice was dictated by expectations, obligations, and the pressure to succeed. For a brief moment, they both fell into silence. The only sound between them was the soft rustle of the leaves in the night breeze. It wasn't awkward, just quiet, as if both of them were digesting the weight of the conversation. Then, as if on impulse, Liam spoke again. You know, I've always wanted to paint, he said, the words slipping out before he could stop them. He chuckled softly at the absurdity of it. I guess it's a bit cliché, isn't it? A billionaire heir wanting to be an artist. But when I was younger, I used to sneak away to my mother's study, grab a sketchbook, and just draw. It was the only time I felt like I could breathe. Isabel turned toward him fully, surprised by the vulnerability he was showing. She didn't expect him to share something so personal, so raw. Why don't you do it now? She asked, her voice soft but insistent. I can't, he said quietly. I don't have time, and it's not what my family wants. They want me to run the empire, not waste time on silly dreams. Isabel stepped closer. A quiet fire ignited within her. She said, "Who says it's a waste? Maybe it's what you need. You can't just live for them, Liam. You deserve something real." Liam didn't know what to say. He had never let anyone speak to him like that before, especially not someone like Isabel, someone who had nothing to gain by telling him the truth. But there was something in her eyes, something that made him want to believe her. For the first time in his life, Liam realized how much he had been suppressing, how much he had buried beneath the weight of his family's expectations. Isabel, in her quiet, unassuming way, had cracked open a door he had long shut. The days after the gala felt like a haze for Liam. His mind replayed every moment of that night. His unexpected conversation with Isabel, her words that felt more like a challenge than a comfort, and the way her gaze seemed to peel away the layers of his carefully constructed life. He couldn't shake it off. The thought of her lingered like a quiet hum in the back of his mind, drowning out the usual noise of his obligations. He tried to push it all aside, his responsibilities, his family's expectations, and especially the fleeting connection he had with Isabel. She was a distraction. She didn't belong in his world. She couldn't. His family would never accept her, not because of who she was, but because of who they were. Liam sat at his desk in the study, going through the motions. He was meeting with his father later that evening to discuss the upcoming merger between Kensington Enterprises and a rival company. It was a big deal,
one that would solidify his place as the future of the family business. His father's words echoed in his head. "You need to be ready to take over, Liam. This is your legacy. The family expects it." The weight of those words felt heavier than ever before. Liam stared at the stack of papers in front of him, barely able to focus. His thoughts kept drifting back to Isabel, the way she had looked at him, not with the polished reverence others offered, but with an honest, unguarded gaze. She had seen him for who he truly was, and it scared him. For the first time in his life, he wondered if his world of wealth and control had been nothing more than a cage. The sound of his phone vibrating on the desk pulled him out of his thoughts. It was a message from his mother, Eleanor Kensington, inviting him to dinner at the family estate that evening. The usual. A perfect evening in a perfect world filled with perfectly curated conversation. He couldn't help but sigh. "Liam," his father's voice had said during their last meeting, "the right woman is just as important as the right business deal. I want you to think about your future, not just in terms of money, but in terms of family. A woman of status, a woman who will elevate our name." He knew exactly what that meant. Someone who could blend seamlessly into their world of privilege and power. Someone who wouldn't challenge the rigid structure that had been built over generations. Someone who understood that the first priority was the family legacy, not personal desires. Liam leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes, his mind drifting back to Isabel. She didn't fit that mold. She wasn't from his world, and he wasn't sure she ever could be. The reality of their differences settled in his chest like a weight. She was wild and untamed, everything he had always been told to avoid. And yet, she had made him feel something real, something raw. His phone vibrated again, interrupting his thoughts. This time, it was Isabel. She had sent him a simple message. "I know this isn't easy for you, but I think we both know this is worth exploring. Don't let your family decide your happiness." Liam's fingers hovered over the screen. A part of him wanted to reach out to her, to tell her everything, how he felt, how conflicted he was, and how much he wanted to break free. But then the weight of his family's expectations crept in again. His father's voice rang in his ears. "You have a responsibility, Liam. You owe it to the family to do this right."
He gripped his phone tighter, the urge to respond, fighting with his desire to suppress his feelings. He couldn't, not yet. He needed to play it safe, to keep his distance. Isabel was a beautiful, passionate distraction, but that was all she could be. His world, the one his family had built, demanded more than a fleeting romance. Later that evening, the family dinner felt more like a performance than ever. Liam sat at the head of the table, surrounded by his family, his father, his mother, his sister, Caroline, and a few close family friends. Everything about the evening was pristine, perfectly set plates, crystal glasses, and the hum of polite conversation. His father spoke at length about the latest merger, and his mother casually mentioned a few suitable women who had expressed interest in Liam. His sister, Caroline, smirked when she mentioned the woman who was the right fit for him, the one his mother had already started talking to about wedding plans. Liam's stomach churned. He wanted to speak up, to argue, but the words wouldn't come. His thoughts kept drifting back to Isabel, to the raw, unfiltered connection they had shared, to her voice, her laughter, her honesty. She was nothing like the women his family tried to set him up with. But that was the problem, wasn't it? Isabel wasn't part of this world. She didn't belong. And as much as he wished it were different, Liam knew he couldn't have both worlds. "Liam, you're awfully quiet tonight." His father's voice cut through the haze of his thoughts. He snapped back to reality, forcing a smile. "Just thinking, Father," he said, his voice a little too distant.
Thinking about your future, I hope, Victor said with a smile that didn't quite. You need to make the right choice, Liam. This merger, this is the kind of decision that will define the future of our company. And as for your future, he let the words hang in the air, as if they were part of the same equation. You need a woman who understands the weight of your responsibilities, someone who can handle the pressures of being with a man like you. Liam clenched his jaw, his fingers tightening around the edge of his glass. Someone who understands the weight of my responsibilities. It was always the same thing. He wasn't allowed to choose for himself. His family had already chosen for him. Do you think it's possible to have both love and duty, or are they always at odds with each other? Can Liam have the life he wants without losing everything he's ever known? Comment below. Would you choose love over your family's expectations, or is that too risky? And do you think Liam will ever be able to break free from the pressure of his family's legacy? The following weekend, Liam found himself once again caught between two worlds: the pull of his family's expectations and the lure of a life he had never dared to imagine for himself. His phone buzzed on the passenger seat of his car, the message lighting up the screen. "Can we meet? I think we should talk." It was from Isabel. He had spent the last few days wrestling with his thoughts, torn between the comforting, predictable world his family had built for him and the thrilling uncertainty Isabel represented. Despite his resolve to put distance between them, his fingers had already unlocked the phone, typing a response before he could stop himself. "Where?" Isabel's reply was simple but direct. "The gallery at 2 p.m. I'll be waiting." It was as if she already knew the tension in his mind, the way he had been avoiding her, yet he still couldn't keep his distance. He wasn't sure what he expected when they met again, but he was certainly not prepared for the storm of emotions that her mere presence evoked in him. As the clock ticked toward 2 p.m., Liam drove through the city streets, his mind racing. He had made his decision, or so he thought. He had told himself he needed to stay away from Isabel, that she was a complication he didn't need in his already complicated life. But his heart was stubborn, and when he saw the small, unassuming art gallery nestled between two high-end boutiques, his heart pounded against his chest. This was no longer about keeping his distance. This was about finally confronting the feelings that had been stirring inside him for days. Isabel was standing in front of the gallery, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable as she gazed at the sidewalk. The moment she saw him approach, her eyes flickered with something like relief, but it quickly shifted to wariness. "Liam," she greeted him, her voice steady but guarded. "Isabel," he replied, his throat tight. I wasn't sure if this was a good idea. I've been thinking about it a lot, and..." She held up her hand, cutting him off. "I get it. You're not sure where this goes? Neither am I. But I couldn't just let it go. I needed to talk to you." Liam hesitated, unsure how to respond. Isabel had always been straightforward with him, something he wasn't used to in his world of carefully constructed appearances and pleasantries. It was part of why he was drawn to her, but it was also part of why he was scared. She didn't hide behind masks the way he had been taught to. She didn't care about his name or the weight of his family's legacy. Isabel's gaze softened as she looked at him, and for a moment the hard edges of the world they both inhabited seemed to disappear. "I don't expect you to drop everything and be with me. I just want you to be honest with yourself. Can you really keep living the life they've chosen for you?" His breath hitched. "I don't know. I'm not sure I can do anything else, but I also don't know how to let go of everything I ever knew." She took a step forward, closing the distance between them, and reached out to touch his arm. The simple gesture sent a jolt through him, and he felt the walls he had so carefully built around himself begin to crack.
"Then let's figure it out together," she said softly. "I'm not asking you to change your entire life for me, but I need to know that you're willing to fight for what you really want, that you're willing to fight for us." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning.
Liam stood still for a long moment, grappling with the emotions that surged inside him. She was asking him to take a leap, one that could cost him everything: his family's legacy, the future they had planned for him, his role in the empire. It all seemed so much more important than a woman who didn't belong in his world. And yet, here she was, standing before him, her vulnerability laid bare. The very thing he had been trying to avoid was the one thing he now found himself craving more than anything else: real, honest love. Isabel wasn't asking him to change overnight, but for him to acknowledge that he had the power to make a choice. "I don't know how to do this," he said quietly, his voice strained. "I don't know how to live for myself. I've spent my whole life doing what's expected." Isabel's smile was small but understanding. "I know, but you don't have to do it alone." For a moment, everything seemed to stop. The sounds of the city faded. The hum of the world outside became distant. All that mattered was the quiet intimacy between them. And in that silence, Liam realized something profound. He wasn't alone. Not anymore. But before he could voice the thoughts swirling in his mind, the door to the gallery opened, and a man stepped outside. Gregory Williams, a prominent businessman and a close family friend. Liam's stomach twisted as he recognized the man immediately. Gregory's eyes flicked to Liam, then to Isabel, a look of mild surprise crossing his face. "Well, well," Gregory said with a grin, his tone a little too smooth. "Liam Kensington, stepping into a gallery. That's a first. Hope you're not too far gone for the arts, eh?" Isabel tensed at the interruption, and Liam could feel her discomfort. Gregory's presence only heightened the tension in the air. He was one of those who represented everything Liam's family expected him to be. It was clear that Gregory didn't belong in this world Isabel inhabited, and that discomfort was palpable. "Gregory," Liam said, his voice colder than he intended, "I was just leaving. Good to see you." But Gregory wasn't done. He smiled, his eyes flicking between the two of them. "Leaving? Oh, I'm sure you've got more important things to do. But I was just talking to your father. You know, we should catch up sometime. Maybe dinner. We can talk about that merger." Liam could feel his patience wearing thin. This was exactly the world he didn't want to return to, the one where everything was about business, status, and power. Isabel's hand brushed against his arm, a quiet signal to let it go. And for once, Liam listened. He nodded curtly at Gregory and turned back to Isabel. "Let's go inside," Isabel said, leading him into the gallery. "I've got something to show you." Have you ever felt the pressure of society's expectations pulling you in one direction while your heart leads you another? Do you think Liam will ever choose what he truly wants, despite the pressures? Share your thoughts below. How do you think Liam will handle the growing tension between his family's expectations and his feelings for Isabel? Do you think he'll stand up for himself, or will he fold under the pressure? The atmosphere inside the gallery was calm, almost soothing. The cool, ambient lighting of the room cast soft shadows over the artwork on the walls. Isabel led Liam through the space, her hand brushing lightly against his arm as she walked beside him. The quiet hum of the gallery's background music provided a stark contrast to the tension that still lingered between them. They had entered the world she had built, a place where art spoke louder than money, and where she felt a sense of control over her own destiny. As they stood before one of the large canvases, Isabel broke the silence. "This is one of my favorites," she said, her voice warm, but there was an edge of sadness underneath. Liam looked at the painting, a blend of swirling, dark colors that seemed to move across the canvas. It was chaotic, but beautiful in its own way. He could feel the raw emotion behind it. "It's incredible," he said, though he wasn't sure he understood it all. Art had never been something he felt comfortable with, a world that was just as foreign to him as the world Isabel had grown up in. "I don't know how to explain it," she continued, her eyes focused on the painting. but there was a time in my life when I felt like I was just drifting. There's something about color, about creating something out of nothing, that gave me control when everything else felt like out of my hands." She paused, then added, "Sometimes you have to create your own path when the one you're on isn't what you expected." Liam listened intently, but the words she was speaking seemed to be directed more at herself than at him. It struck a chord in him, something he had never truly considered before. He had been so focused on meeting the expectations set before him, trying to play a part in a life he didn't choose, that he hadn't realized he was still waiting for someone else to give him permission to live it. Isabel turned towards him, her face more open than he had ever seen it before. "I grew up in a small town," she said, almost as if testing the waters. "My mom worked 3 jobs to keep a roof over our heads. We didn't have much, but we had each other. My mom taught me that your worth isn't in what you own, but in who you are." She met his gaze, her eyes soft with a vulnerability she hadn't shown him before. "And then I came to the city, looking for something more.
I thought I'd find the answer here, but instead I found myself in debt, alone, and trying to figure out who I really was." Liam's heart tightened as he listened to her speak. It wasn't just a tale of hardship. It was a revelation, one that peeled away the layers of her confident, independent exterior. Isabel had been fighting her own battles, ones Liam had never known about. And yet here they were, 2 souls connected by the very thing that had kept them apart, the pressure of expectations. He felt compelled to share something of his own, something that had been buried for far too long. "You know, my family always planned my life for me," he began, his voice more vulnerable than he intended. "Since I was a kid, I knew exactly what I was supposed to do. Go to the best schools, join the family business, marry someone suitable. They never asked me what I wanted. They never asked me what I dreamed of. I was just supposed to follow the path they laid out for me." Isabel was silent for a moment, letting his words hang in the air. "So what do you dream of, Liam?" she asked quietly, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. Liam exhaled slowly, staring at the ground. He had never really thought about it before. Not in a way that mattered, at least. His dreams had always been secondary to his family's wishes. But as he stood there in the quiet space of the gallery, surrounded by art that had been born out of struggle and passion, he realized something he had never fully acknowledged. He didn't want the life his family had chosen for him. He didn't want to run the empire, manage the mergers, or keep up the image of the perfect heir. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice low. "I've always been too scared to dream. Every time I thought about doing something for myself, I was told it wasn't good enough, or that it wasn't right. So I stopped." Isabel stepped closer to him, her eyes soft with understanding. "You don't have to stop dreaming, Liam. It's never too late to start living for yourself." For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The weight of their shared confessions lingered between them, the unspoken bond growing stronger with each passing second. And yet Liam knew that even in this fragile moment, there was an invisible barrier between them, a barrier built by years of his family's expectations and the reality of their different worlds. The gallery felt quieter now, as if the art around them had absorbed all the noise. Liam was lost in the raw honesty of Isabel's words, but the familiar pull of his family's expectations began to creep back in. The pressure, the legacy, it was still there, lingering like a shadow. And as much as he wanted to break free, he knew it wasn't going to be easy. But Isabel was different. She wasn't asking him to choose her over everything he had built. She was simply asking him to choose himself. Liam's chest tightened as he met her gaze. "Isabel, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to make a choice between you and my family, between what I want and what's expected of me." Isabel's expression softened, a small smile tugging at her lips. "You don't have to figure it all out at once, Liam. But don't let fear keep you from living the life you deserve. For the first time in his life, Liam felt the weight of his choices. Real choices, not the ones his family had imposed on him. And as he looked at Isabel, standing there with her unwavering belief in him, he realized that maybe, just maybe, he had a chance to choose a different path. Do you believe it's possible to break free from the expectations placed on you and live for yourself? How would you feel if you were in Liam's shoes, torn between family duty and personal happiness? Comment below. Do you think Liam can find a way to be true to himself while keeping his family's legacy intact? Or will he have to choose one over the other? The days following their conversation at the gallery passed in a blur for Liam. There were meetings with investors, constant discussions with his father about the future of the family business, and the endless parade of faces at social gatherings. But through it all, his mind kept returning to Isabel, to the way she made him feel, like he was more than just the sum of his family's expectations. She had cracked open a part of him that had been locked away for too long. It wasn't just her honesty that had gotten to him, though. It was her belief in him, the quiet way she encouraged him to live a life of his own choosing. She saw him not as the heir to a billion-dollar empire, but as Liam. And for the first time in years, Liam began to wonder what it would be like to actually live for himself. Isabel had been busy as well. She had a new exhibition coming up at the gallery, and the stress of preparing for it was evident in the way she moved, her hands often wringing together, her brow furrowed with concentration. But despite her own pressures, she made time to meet with Liam. Their conversations, though fleeting, had become the highlight of his days. They began to share little pieces of themselves that they hadn't shown to anyone else. With each passing moment, the bond between them deepened, threading its way through their lives in ways they couldn't yet fully understand. One evening, Liam called her after one of his meetings, feeling an intense urge to hear her voice. "Isabel," he said when she answered, his voice low but steady. He paused, unsure of how to express what he felt. "I've been thinking about what you said the other night, about choosing a life for myself. I don't know if I can do it, but I want to try. I want to stop hiding behind my name, behind my family's expectations. I want to see where we could go."
Isabel's silence on the other end of the line felt like an eternity. Liam held his breath, unsure of what she would say. But then she spoke, her voice filled with warmth. "You're not alone in this, Liam," she said softly. "You never have been. If you're ready to take that step, I'll be here. But this has to be your decision, not just for me, but for you." Her words settled deep into his chest, and for the first time, he felt a sense of peace. He had spent so much of his life thinking he had to live for others, but Isabel was right. He had to live for himself. It wouldn't be easy, but it was the only way he could ever be truly happy. A few days later, Liam showed up at the gallery unannounced. Isabel was working on a new piece in the back room, her concentration absolute as she painted the canvas before her. The soft strokes of her brush seemed to breathe life into the colors, and for a moment, Liam simply stood at the doorway, watching her. There was something serene about the way she worked, something that called to him. Without turning around, Isabel spoke. "You know, you're not supposed to sneak up on someone working with paint." Liam smiled softly, stepping into the room. "I couldn't help it. I was just watching you. You make it look so easy." Isabel laughed, though the sound was filled with a gentle self-awareness. "It's not. Art never is. But when you're doing something you love, it feels like magic." Liam moved closer, his steps slow, as if testing the ground beneath him. "I've been thinking a lot about magic lately, about what it would take to create a life that's mine, something real, something I choose, not something dictated by anyone else."
Isabel set her brush down and turned to face him, her eyes searching his. "What are you saying, Liam?" He met her gaze, the weight of his family's legacy pressing down on him, but not as heavily as it once had. He could feel the change inside him, the shift in his heart as he spoke. "I'm saying that I want to be with you, not because it's easy or because it makes sense to anyone else, but because it feels right. I don't want to live a life that's already been planned for me. I want a life I choose." Her words settled deep into his chest, and for the first time, he felt a sense of peace. He had spent so much of his life thinking he had to live for others. He had to live for himself. It wouldn't be easy, but it was the only way he could ever be truly happy. Is it ever really possible to break free from the chains of expectation, especially when they've been with you your whole life? Can Liam truly embrace his freedom and choose love? What do you think? Could you ever walk away from everything you know to pursue something uncertain but real? Comment below and share your thoughts. What would you do in Liam's shoes? Liam woke up the next morning to a world that felt different. The light streaming through his bedroom window was softer, the air fresher, as though the weight of his family's expectations had lessened overnight. For the first time in ages, he felt a glimmer of hope, a sense of possibility. His mind kept returning to Isabel and the quiet promise they had made to one another. They knew that they had only just begun, but it felt like they were building something real. And that, more than anything, was enough to push him forward. But as the day wore on, that hope began to fray at the edges. The messages and calls from his family piled up. His father, always direct and unwavering, had called him that morning with a reminder about the board meeting that was happening in a few days. The merger was still on track, and there was talk about more potential business deals that could be crucial to the family's future. There was no mention of his personal life, no question about his thoughts or feelings.
It was as if Liam's life, his real life, had become secondary to the empire he was meant to uphold. It was then that his mother called. "Liam!" Her voice was calm, but there was a sharpness to it that made him tense. "We need to talk about the upcoming gala next week. I've already spoken to some of the families, and we've arranged for you to meet a few suitable women. You'll need to be there. Your future depends on it." Liam's stomach twisted at the mention of the gala. He had known it was coming, the endless parade of women who would smile sweetly and laugh politely, all vying for his attention. He could already picture the conversation, his mother's hopeful glances, his father's silent approval. He had always done his duty, played his part, but not anymore. Not after everything that had happened with Isabel. "Mother," Liam's voice was steady, though his chest tightened. "I'm not sure I can do this anymore." There was a pause on the other end of the line. He could hear his mother's breath, just the slightest hitch before she spoke again. "Liam, what are you talking about? You've always known your role in this family. This is who you are, who you're meant to be." "I know," Liam said, his voice a little more firm now, the weight of his words settling in. "But I don't want to be that person anymore. I can't keep living a life that isn't mine. I've been suffocating under this for too long, and I'm done pretending." A silence filled the line, and Liam could almost hear his mother's gears turning in her mind as she processed his words. He didn't expect her to understand. After all, she had never questioned the life that had been chosen for her. She had accepted it without a second thought. But for him, that was no longer enough. "You need to understand, Liam. This family has worked too hard to get where we are. You can't just throw that all away for some foolish whim. You're expected to uphold this legacy. Your duty is to us, to your name." Liam closed his eyes, the familiar pressure in his chest returning. The old weight, the one that had once kept him in line, was pressing back down on him, but this time it felt different. This time he wasn't afraid. "I'm not throwing it away, Mother. I'm choosing something for myself. I'm choosing my own happiness," he said, his voice steady.
The call ended abruptly, leaving the silence of the room to settle around him. Liam stared at his phone for a long moment, feeling the emotional toll of the conversation sink in. He had just told his mother that he wasn't going to follow the path they had chosen for him. And for a split second, he felt the full force of what that would mean. His family would never forgive him for this. They would never understand. But as the weight of his decision hit him, he felt the tug of something else, a deeper connection to the life he was beginning to build with Isabel. He had taken a step into unknown territory, but it was the only step that made sense. That evening, as the sky turned dark and the city lights flickered on, Isabel invited him over to her apartment. She had been quieter than usual in their recent text, and Liam could tell she was just as uncertain as he was. But there was something about being with her that made everything feel clearer. He arrived at her apartment just as the night sky darkened, the city lights outside painting her room with a soft, golden glow. Isabel greeted him with a warm, welcoming smile, but there was something behind her eyes that made him pause. He could see that she was just as fragile as he felt, as if the weight of their growing connection was starting to shift the ground beneath them. "Hey," she greeted, stepping aside to let him in. "I've been thinking a lot about what we talked about." "I know. Me too." Liam's voice was steady, but his heart was pounding. He had to tell her. He had to tell her everything. He couldn't keep hiding his feelings for her, couldn't keep denying what he wanted. They sat down, the silence between them thick with unspoken words. After a moment, Isabel broke the silence. "Liam, there's something I need to ask you." "What is it?" he asked, his voice gentle. "Are you sure about this? About us? About everything? I know this isn't easy for you." Liam reached for her hand, his fingers gently brushing against hers. "I'm sure," he said softly. But just as he spoke those words, the door to her apartment swung open unexpectedly. Isabel's mother stood in the doorway, her eyes wide open with shock. "Isabel, what's going on here?" her mother asked, her voice sharp with surprise and something else. Disapproval? Liam could feel the tension in the air thickening.
Before Isabel could speak, her mother turned to Liam. You're him. You're the Kensington heir, aren't you?" Liam's stomach dropped. This was it, the moment he had feared. Isabel's mother had just discovered his identity. Isabel's eyes widened in disbelief as she looked back and forth between them. "Mom, what are you talking about?" she demanded, her voice shaking. Liam's heart raced as the tension in the room reached a breaking point. This was the confrontation he had tried to avoid, the collision between his world and hers. What would you do if you were Isabel, confronted with the truth about someone you've grown close to? Could you continue to pursue love despite the pressure from your family? Comment below. How do you think Isabel will react to Liam's family legacy being revealed? Can their relationship survive this revelation, or will it tear them apart? The tension in Isabel's apartment was suffocating. Liam stood frozen in place, his hand still outstretched toward Isabel's, but his thoughts were elsewhere. Her mother's arrival had shattered the fragile bubble they had created around their relationship. He could feel the weight of her gaze, the disapproval that lingered in the air like a storm cloud. But it wasn't just her that Liam was worried about. It was Isabel. He had known this moment was coming, the moment when his family's legacy and the woman he loved would collide, when the truth of who he was would finally be revealed and everything they had built between them would be tested. But he hadn't prepared for this. He hadn't prepared for the fear in Isabel's eyes when she realized who he really was. Isabel's mother stood in the doorway, her eyes narrowed in suspicion. "You're the heir to the Kensington fortune, aren't you?" Her voice was sharp, cold. It wasn't question, it was an accusation. Isabel's face drained of color as she turned to Liam, her eyes wide with shock. "You never told me! You never told me who you really were!" Liam's heart clenched in his chest. He hadn't wanted to hide the truth from her. He had intended to tell her everything. But the fear of rejection, the fear of what this revelation might do to them, had kept him silent. And now, as her mother's words hung in the air, he realized how much he had taken for granted, how much he had assumed she would understand. "I'm sorry, Isabel," Liam said, his voice thick with regret. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want you to think I was using you for some kind of escape." Isabel's mother stepped into the room, her gaze now trained on him with an intensity that made him feel like a trapped animal. "What kind of game are you playing, young man?" she said, her tone dripping with disdain. "My daughter deserves better than to be some pawn in your world of wealth and privilege." Liam opened his mouth to respond, but Isabel cut him off. "Mom, please." Her voice was shaky, her hands trembling as she turned to face him. "I can't believe this. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you hide this from me?" "I didn't want to hurt you," Liam said again, his voice hoarse. "I thought that if you knew who I really was, you would see me nothing more than just another man with a name and a fortune. I didn't want to be that. I wanted to be something real for you, Isabel." But Isabel wasn't listening anymore. Her mother's words had planted a seed of doubt, and it was taking root deep in her heart. The world she had always known, the one where love and security had been simple, was now shrouded in complications that felt insurmountable. Isabel stepped back, her eyes distant. "You should have told me," she whispered, her voice cracking. Liam's heart shattered at her words. He had never meant to deceive her, never meant to make her feel like their connection wasn't real. But the more he tried to explain, the more he realized how powerless he was in this moment. The world he had come from, the world that had always been so carefully constructed, was now in direct opposition to everything Isabel had believed about love and happiness. "Isabel," Liam said, his voice trembling with emotion, "please understand. I'm not just my name. I'm not just my family's fortune. I want to choose a life with you, away from all of this. But I can't do it alone. I need you to choose me. I need you to choose this, despite everything." Her mother scoffed, clearly unimpressed. "You think she can just throw away everything for you? The life she's worked for? The life that's hers?" Isabel's mother's words struck like a whip, and for the first time, Isabel faltered. Her entire world had been turned upside down. Everything she had believed about love, about sacrifice, about happiness, none of it seemed certain anymore. Isabel reached for her hand again, but she pulled away, her expression conflicted. "I don't know what to think anymore," she whispered, her voice cracking. Liam's heart shattered at her words. He had never meant to deceive her, never meant to make her feel like their connection wasn't real.
Constantly scrutinized by society and his family, or to walk away from the unknown and return to the life she had always known, the life that was safe. Her mother's voice cut through the silence once more. "Isabel, you're better than this. You deserve someone who can give you everything, without the baggage of family scandals and expectations." Liam's throat tightened as he looked at Isabel, pleading with his eyes. "But I can give you something real, Isabel. I can give you a life where you don't have to pretend, a life where we're free." Isabel took a deep breath, her heart torn between the man who was offering her everything and the life that had always been safe, predictable. She knew her choice would define her, her future, her happiness, her love. "I need time," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam nodded, his chest aching with the weight of her words. "I'll wait, as long as it takes." Do you think Isabel will choose to follow her heart and risk everything for Liam? Or will the pressure of her family's expectations pull her back into the safety of her old life? Comment below. What would you do if you were in Isabel's shoes? Would you choose love, even if it meant sacrificing everything you knew? The days that followed the confrontation were the hardest Liam had ever faced. He tried to go through the motions, attending meetings, dealing with family matters, and keeping up appearances. But the weight of Isabel's absence was unbearable. Every room he entered felt emptier, and every conversation felt hollow. He had made a choice, one that would change the course of his life forever. But he wasn't sure if she was willing to make that choice too. Isabel had retreated into herself. She hadn't responded to his messages. She hadn't returned his calls. For the first time in his life, Liam understood what it was like to feel completely out of control of his own fate. Isabel had made it clear that she needed time, but as the days stretched on, he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that he was losing her. The world he had always lived in, the one of luxury and expectation, seemed like a prison in comparison to the life he had envisioned with Isabel. But he couldn't just give up. He couldn't let fear dictate his life. He knew what he wanted, and he knew that what they had shared was real. He had never believed in destiny, but in that moment, he realized that he would never forgive himself if he didn't fight for her. It was late one evening, after another round of silent hours, that he received a message from Isabel. "I'm ready to talk. Can we meet?" His heart soared. He didn't hesitate. He was there within an hour. When he arrived at the small cafe where they had first met, Isabel was already there, sitting in the corner, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. She looked up when she saw him, her face soft but uncertain. For a moment, neither of them spoke. There was so much to say, but neither knew where to start. Liam took a seat across from her, his hands trembling slightly. "Isabel," he began, his voice low and sincere. "I'm sorry. I should have told you everything from the start. I should have trusted you more." She shook her head, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and understanding. "It wasn't about trust, Liam. It was about truth. You hid part of yourself from me, and that hurt. I had to come to terms with what that meant for us." "I know," he said quietly, reaching across the table for her hand. She hesitated for a moment, but then allowed him to take it, her fingers intertwining with his. The warmth of her hand was a lifeline, grounding him in a moment he had feared he might never reach. "I need you to know that I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I've spent so long trying to be what everyone expected, trying to follow a path that wasn't mine. But you made me realize I don't have to keep living that way. I can be myself. I want to be with you. I'll do whatever it takes." Tears welled up in Isabel's eyes, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she squeezed his hand, her grip firm and sure. "I've been scared too," she whispered. "I've been scared that loving you means losing myself, losing everything I've worked for. But I can't deny what's in my heart either." Liam's heart caught in his throat. "Isabel," she said very faintly at last. "I love you, Liam," she said, her voice filled with both relief and certainty. "I love you and I want to be with you, despite everything, despite our differences, despite our worlds. But you need to know that I can't be just another part of your empire. I need to keep my independence. I need a life that's mine, too." Liam nodded, his heart swelling with a love he had never imagined could feel this powerful. "I understand. I promise you, Isabel, you won't lose yourself in this. I want to be with you for who you are, not because of what I have. I want to choose you, just as you are." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their words sinking in. The tension that had been between them for days now began to lift, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Liam felt like he could finally breathe. There was a future, an uncertain, messy, beautiful future that lay before them. It wouldn't be easy, but they would face it together. Isabel smiled through her tears, her eyes bright with something Liam had only ever dreamed of: hope. Then let's choose each other. Let's choose a life that's ours.
Liam grinned, a wide, genuine smile that reached all the way to his eyes. Yes, together. The days that followed were a whirlwind of change. Liam had to face the consequences of his choice, his family's anger, the judgment from society, the looming fear that he was making a mistake. But with Isabel by his side, he felt stronger, more certain than he had ever been. He knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. It would be filled with obstacles, with sacrifices, and with challenges they would have to face together. But it would also be filled with love. Real love, not the kind dictated by wealth or status. And in the end, that was enough. Liam's father had refused to speak to him for weeks, and his mother had not been kind in her response. They tried to convince him to return to the life they had planned, to put aside his dreams for the good of the family. But Liam remained steadfast. He chose Isabel, and for the first time, he felt truly free. Isabel continued to build her career as an artist, her work gaining more recognition as she embraced her truth. She never gave up her independence, but with Liam's support, she found that her world didn't have to be defined by the expectations others placed on her. Together, they built a life based on love, on honesty, and on the courage to choose one another above all else. Liam's family, though still upset, eventually came to accept that their son had made his choice. It wasn't the path they had envisioned for him, but it was his path nonetheless. And for the first time, Liam felt like he was living his own life, one where love came first.
Thanks for watching this story all the way through. If you loved this one, trust me, you won't want to miss the next. It's going to be even wilder and more thrilling than you can imagine. Stay tuned. And remember, this is your favorite channel, Tales in the Powder Room.